The US dollar is one of the strongest currencies in the world, being currently responsible for almost 90% of all global transactions. It is not only America's sweetheart. Every country depends on it. You would expect this to last forever, however. There is a new kid in town aspiring to become the US dollar's most serious competitor. So, who is this currency, and what does this de-dollarization require? De-dollarization, in other words, a shift away from reliance on the US dollar as the primary global reserve currency, requires numerous exporters, importers, borrowers, lenders, and currency traders worldwide to independently decide to use other currencies. Of course, this won't happen overnight. If the US dollar is genuinely in trouble, it has to come from a potentially significant player. And that player exists in the form of the BRICS currency. In this video, we examine how much the BRICS currency can genuinely be a serious competitor to the US dollar as the world's primary currency. First, let's take a look at the past. Back in 2006, Brazil, Russia, India, and China formed the BRIC group, which stands for these countries' names. The main goal was to establish deeper ties between member nations and cooperate on economic expansion, including trade. And this should act as a counterbalance to traditional Western influence. More specifically, it should be a stable and independent currency that can compete with the US dollar on the global stage. In 2010, South Africa joined, transforming BRIC into BRICS. Together, these 5 countries already account for more than 40% of the world population and a quarter of the global economy. And as of January 1st, 2024, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates followed suit. Argentina would have joined too, but backed out for now. Already, over 40 other countries have expressed sincere interest in joining the forum. They view BRICS as an alternative to global bodies viewed as dominated by the traditional Western powers, and they hope membership will unlock benefits including development finance and increased trade and investment. Dissatisfaction with the global order among developing nations was exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, when life-saving vaccines were hoarded by the rich countries. In addition, considering recent global events such as the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, along with the United Arab Emirates accepting non-US dollar oil trades and China brokering a delicate truce between Saudi Arabia and Iran, it is no longer as unlikely that a new BRICS currency might become the new global currency. If you listen carefully to certain economists, the dollar's reign as the world's financial instrument of choice is coming to an end. Driven by a blend of political and economic factors, countries ranging from Israel to France, and the more anticipated players like Russia and China, express a desire for increased transactions in currencies other than the US dollar. It is estimated that over 60% of all foreign exchange reserves are held in dollars. However, financial reports have shown that central banks have also started to tiptoe away from the dollar, with currencies like the Chinese yuan, Japanese yen, and the Swiss franc taking up a growing portion of their global reserves. Even the White House acknowledges that the US dollar could face a growing challenge from BRICS countries, thanks to the bloc's growing size and influence over global trade. But what would it mean if the US dollar is no longer the global dominant currency? Basically, if that would happen, the United States no longer rules the world. The US dollar has been the global reserve currency since the end of World War II, and it has allowed the US to exert significant influence over other countries. Like it can use the US dollar as a tool to implement economic sanctions, control inflation, and influence other countries' monetary policies. And if the BRICS currency takes over, the US would become just another player in the global economy. So it would have less power, less influence, and less ability to make decisions that affect the entire world. And internally, the United States would face a significant blow to its economy, as the BRICS currency would undoubtedly impact the value of the US dollar, leading to inflation and financial instability. But not only the United States would feel the impact of a new BRICS currency, it would also heavily affect Europe. The euro is currently the second most used currency in the world, and if a new currency were to take over, it would mean that Europe would have to decide whether to stick with the euro or switch over to this new currency. For Europe, this will be like choosing between a rock and a hard place because, whatever the outcome, it will have significant consequences for its economy. Let's not forget that ever since the United Kingdom's exit from the European Union, the euro's position as a global currency has already weakened substantially. The City of London is one of the largest financial hubs in the world, and with Britain's exit, the European Union has lost crucial access to this key financial center. And what about developing countries? Well, these countries will pay the ultimate price. They will end up in an extremely bad situation, as many developing countries rely on the US dollar for international trade and investment. If a new BRICS currency takes over as the #1 global currency, this would lead to economic collapse, inflation, and social unrest, as the dollar will become worthless. These countries have to switch over to the new currency, but that would require a significant amount of new investment in infrastructure and education. And even then, it might not be enough to catch up to the developed world. What brings this diverse group of BRICS countries together in the first place? Well, aside from the fact that they're all transitioning from middle-income countries to prosperous ones, it's mainly their shared frustration over the high hurdles set by the Western World Bank to get some sustainable help. The IMF, the World Bank's trusty sister organization, loves to play loan Santa for countries in need, but their loans come with a side of tough love, demanding that the state's power decreases and businesses get a free pass to roam wild and free. And guess what? The World Bank follows suit with their own set of demands for these developing nations. As if that's not enough, these countries who dare to borrow find themselves cutting corners elsewhere, sending their economies and people into a tailspin. The White House also acknowledges a sharp decline in global interest in US dollars, but they also say, what currency would those countries hold instead? They need something that looks like money and will act like money. If you don't hold dollars, there's no real alternative because everything else is too small or subject to the same risks as the dollar. But worse, the BRICS members already have an answer to that too. To be successful, the BRICS states do not necessarily need to have a shared trade currency to chip away at the dollar's domain. If BRICS demanded that you pay each member in its own national currency in order to trade with any of them, the dollar's role in the world economy would already go down. There would not be a clear replacement for the dollar as a global reserve in the beginning, but a variety of currencies would gain in importance. And it is a legitimate argument to ask the question of whether other countries should cope with a unipolar currency world. There's a disconnect between the two, the financial world and the real one. It's an interesting line of thinking. Why shouldn't the financial world resemble something closer to the mosaic of cultures, politics, and nations that exists today? Naturally, it's something other global powers, such as Russia and China, would want because it was all, once again, proven when the United States froze hundreds of billions of Moscow's dollar reserves. It reminded other countries that the money can indeed be weaponized. So, who's to gain from a new global currency? All the BRICS members, of course, but in particular China, would benefit greatly from the rise of a new BRICS currency. China has been pushing for this new global currency for years, and if they succeed, they become the dominant player in the global economy. They'd be able to dictate terms to other countries, and they'd have all the power and influence that comes with being the global reserve currency. So why is China not pursuing the yuan to be the new global currency? Well, even though China is a huge global economy, it still is a communist country with a centrally planned economy. This means that the Chinese government has significant control over the country's financial system, which can be a deterrent for international investors and markets. Additionally, China's lack of political freedom and free speech raises concerns among investors about the stability and security of the yuan as a global currency. So, a sort of joint venture is second best for them. They can gradually open up its financial system while it still maintains strict controls on the movement of capital in and out of the country. In conclusion, the world as we know it today is still in need of US dollars, but who would have expected that 5 countries could stir up such a diplomatic tempest while juggling their economic acrobatics? These nations certainly keep us on our toes. This whirlwind tour of the ever-fascinating world of BRICS developments is not at its end as of yet. We will keep you posted